Hey folks, I'm Raleigh Valverde. Here with me for the current interview is a singer-songwriter who's had a very successful career as both a composer for films like Boogie Nights, Hard Eight, and The Anniversary Party, and as an artist with hits like No Myth. He's married to Amy Mann, also a singer-songwriter. He's an incredibly diverse and interesting guy, and he's here with us today to discuss his latest album, Mr. Hollywood Jr. 1947. Welcome, Michael Penn.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
1947, series of interconnected events. Why the fascination with that year?
I've been really interested in that whole period of history in America, sort of from the end of World War II to the beginning of the Cold War. It's just, to me, it's just a really interesting period. And that year in particular is just a watershed year. Just so many things happened that, to me, it's sort of like it's the beginning of the era that we're now living in.
Give me some examples of things that happened in 1947, especially, because a lot of our audience, they weren't born back then.
Yes, that was the year that the National Security Act was passed, which meant it was the year that the CIA was formed. It was the beginning of the military-industrial establishment. It was the year that the UN partitioned Palestine. It was the year that the transistor was invented. It was the year that television finally was sort of reached the west coast of America. It's the year that the sound barrier was broken. I mean, it's just the transistor was invented. It's just all kinds of stuff happened that year that really sort of set up, for me, sort of where we are now. And so my own sort of obsessive fascination with that era and that year in particular just kind of led me to put all my songs in the past in Los Angeles.
Does that year have anything to do, any relevance, as with regards to your father?
It does.
From the war.
Yeah, my dad fought in World War II, and he was a Roosevelt Democrat, and he was an actor, and he came back from that war, and everybody has trauma in their lives, and sort of one of the things that was driving the writing of these songs was just thinking about how dealing with all the trauma in one's life if you had the extra baggage of having just been at a war. And I was thinking about my dad coming back and trying to start a life and find love and all those things. But my father came back, a decorated veteran, and he was blacklisted. And that was also the year that the McCarthy hearings began.
Explain the blacklisting thing. There's probably a lot of people out there that don't understand what happened back then.
It was basically a movement afoot in the country, House Un-American Activities Committee, where they were basically trying to root out communists, because after World War II, when the Soviets no longer were our friends, it was like there were communists under every floorboard. It was glitzy to sort of try to find communists in the movie business for some reason. And my dad, who was a union supporter, was probably, he went to some meetings where he heard people talk from all sorts of different points of view, and somebody named him, and that's the way that worked. People would get named as, communist or something. But he overcame that,
How did that experience color how you approach the business?
It doesn't really, although the approach that I have to the business of the music business now is certainly colored by sort of some of these same events, because, 47 to me is sort of like the start of the corporate world that we're in now. And for me, it's been interesting to see what's happened to the music business as it's been corporatized. And there's essentially only 5 major labels now, not even, I don't think.
Right.
And they may as well be selling shoes. They're not really about music as they once were.
You produced this your newest album. Did you not like the corporatization of big music, so you struck out on your own?
I like to look at organizations as people, and I think organizations have psychologies just like people have psychologies.
Yeah.
And I think if you were to sort of analyze a major record company, you would find that they were clinically insane. So I'm happy to be away from that.
There's a song on the new CD. Walter Reed.
Count the cases piled up high for the 150.
To this place because he was just done. Well, I was writing this song about this guy who was kind of at the end of his rope, and he was in a relationship that was in flames, and because I had said it in this post-war period, he had the additional baggage of war. And I was thinking about, for me, Walter Reed, the hospital in D.C., which actually just was closed down,
Right.
is is really sort of symbolic. It's like back to what I was saying about if you were to sort of analyze these sort of collectives as a person, like if you were to look at America as a person, if that person had a hospital, it would be Walter Reed. Walter Reed is sort of like America's hospital. So it was iconic enough for me that I just made that the focus of the song, of this guy sort of feeling like that's what he needed. He needed to be shipped off to this place because he was just done. Just on an iconic level, it's interesting that because Walter Reed was the first place to deal with what they used to call shell shock, which they now call PTSD.
Right.
And I just find it interesting that in seeing this particular administration, who got reinstalled to a large degree by the amount of fear and stress that this country is feeling, that they removed the cure, so to speak. They closed down the place that dealt with shell shock. So I like life as metaphor.
Right.
When those moments happen, I don't know, it appeals to me.
So, I got to ask you, so many in your family were in the film side of the business. How did you become the music guy?
Probably a black sheep streak that I have, and I didn't want to go into the family business. And also, I think when you're just talking about this, when you're raised by narcissists, you somehow recoil from that, and you just want to hide. And so music is a nice place to express yourself and hide at the same time.
Very cool. Well, thank you very, very much for being
thanks
here.
for having me.
Okay. You can get Michael's current album, Mr. Hollywood Jr. 1947, in stores now or on iTunes. You can also see him live on his national tour through October. Visit his website, michaelpenn.com, for details. You're watching Current TV.